All right, on this episode of MMA Canada Radio, I'm very excited to be talking to an individual competing at Bellator 302, and that goes down on March the 22nd. We've got that Bellator MMA Featherweight Championship on the line as Patricio Pitbull defends his gold against Jeremy Kennedy, and great getting to have Jeremy on MMA Canada Radio. How are you doing, man? You having a solid day so far?
I am, man. Thank you. Yeah, just another day in camp and a day closer, actually, so life's good.
Yeah, and before we kind of started the recording, we were kind of joking about like round two and stuff like that. Like we had initially chatted when you had James Gallagher lined up on the docket for this Belfast card. I'm curious, like what was the timeline like for when this new like title match came your way? I mean, obviously this is a fight you really wanted for sure, but like what was the whole timeline like with the matchup switch there?
Yeah, so this is like obviously what I was gunning for originally. So it did work out well for me, but it was about 3-4 weeks from the date, like I got this switch, so I've had ample notice to, the only real big difference is, because I've been training for this guy for all year pretty much, like I have my game plan down pad, I have everything with the coaches and training partners, but it was just switching from 3 to 5 rounds was the only real big difference, and that's the only thing that kind of impacted my training schedule. I just had to add a little bit more of the workload, but I mean, I found out right when Braga didn't weigh in. So that was like Friday morning for them in Saudi Arabia, and it was like Thursday night out here. And that's pretty much when I got the call that they wanted to make sure I was okay and interested in taking that fight. And I kind of just laughed it off. I was like, of course, like, say less, don't even ask me, just tell me. But yeah, it all worked out, man. And now here we are. We're about 2 weeks out now, and I feel great. I was training for this date already. And yeah, man, I've just finishing up camp.
Yeah, and for, I guess, people that might be curious as to, I guess, the differentiating components between a 3-round preparation versus 5 rounds, I mean, I think people would probably presume there's, like, more of a focus on the, I guess, pacing and, I guess, cardio components, but, like, what does, I guess, shifting one's preparations from a 3-round fight to a 5-round fight look like?
Yeah, biggest thing is, like you nailed it, is more just patience. It's a little bit more of a marathon fight rather than a sprint. When those 3 rounds, by the end of the third, you still have like another half of a fight to go, and on a 5-round fight. Those championship rounds are definitely a game changer. But, I mean, my game is based a lot around cardio and pressure and stuff like that. So, I mean, I don't think it's going to be a big difference for me. Obviously, it is going to be a difference. It's going to be harder. But as far as my skill set goes, I favor a 5-round fight. And I mean, for him too, he's got that switch. That Saudi Arabia fight was only going to be a 3-round fight. So we both got the same amount of time on this jump to 5. And I mean, he knows how to fight these 5-round fights. He's done it his whole career. And just watching his fights, I've picked up on a few things, and I've picked up on a few of his habits. And I think pacing is a big thing for him. And I mean, for me, I'm a guy that gets right in your face right away, and I don't know if much is going to change. I know once that cage door closes, I'm trying to get him out of there. Obviously, though, you have to be a little bit more tactical in your approach when you have 5 rounds, because you have so much more time. That first round isn't as important as it is in a 3-round fight. So you can take that to get some reads and get the feel of him, and really feel out the fight before it picks up. And that's just one thing I've noticed with him, especially in his more recent fights.
And I mean, you work at spaces where there's just like so many, I mean, world-class talents and stuff like that, and I feel like the times we've talked, you're more oriented to being a guy that wants your sparring partners to kind of just do what they're good at. But is there any level of maybe, I guess, gravitating towards some sparring partners that might have a similar body type or stylistic attributes to Pitbull coming up?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Like, Pitbull's got such a unique size for the weight class. He's a pretty small guy and he's also a counterpuncher. So to be short and also be a counterpuncher and dictate range and be good with range is tricky to deal with. And I've been grateful enough to get a couple sparring partners that are very similar look in body type and even like for example, Cody Stamen, he took his time out and he watched a lot of footage on him and kind of helped emulate a bit of his style. And he's a guy who already has that same build, 5'5", 5'6", 66-inch reach, shorter, stockier guy. And just really playing heavy on that counter right hand that he likes and just drawing me in, which Pitbull seems to be able to do is dictate that pace and that range. And I'm just not going to let him do that.
And I think, too, this is a guy that, from past conversations we've had, that's always kind of like a sidebar part of the conversation always. Like, you were fighting up the rankings and Bellator, and, Pitbull was always that kind of guy who was up there. And, there was a couple pseudo recent roadblocks with the whole thing. Like, even before he fought Sergio Pettis, I think a lot of people were really, wondering if you'd be, getting that shot and thinking that you should be getting that shot. And then he obviously, after that, went on to fight in Ryzen. Like, was there any point, and obviously like the Bellator PFL acquisition as well, like did it ever get to any point for you where maybe you were like, oh man, I'm not sure that this fight will ever come to fruition, or did you ultimately always see this fight being one that would come to fruition one day?
Yeah, if I'm being honest with you, I definitely, I got skeptical. It was just like thing after thing, and he was never even mentioning my name when I was clearly the number one contender. And it just seemed like it was something, I don't want to say he was avoiding, because that's kind of like cocky or arrogant, but he definitely wasn't eager to fight me. The number one contender, the clear guy that was next in line. And he was, rather fighting 3 days notice in Japan, or obviously you can't fault him for wanting to challenge down. And then just little things like that is, I started to get skeptical of being like, this guy doesn't want this fight. He's, doing everything else other than fighting me. He's fighting everywhere in different promotions, different weight classes. But then for it to actually come to fruition, and I was getting kind of near the end. I was almost not necessarily over it. I was just ready to fight again, because I do believe I'm the best in the division, in the world. And if I got to fight somebody else just to get, paid and stay active, I expect to win. Obviously you never want to risk your title shot, but that's pretty much how this Bellator, the Belfast original with James Gallagher came about. It's just, once that champ versus champ got announced, I was, kind of like, man, I got to start looking after me too. Like, what, I start waiting too long and it becomes a detriment. You're looking at ring rust, you're looking at 16 months off. And so I was like, you know what, if I have to go earn it again, I will. But it just happened to work out perfectly, and that I ended up getting the fight that I've been looking for all year.
Yeah, and you talk about, like, seeing yourself as the top bantamweight, or featherweight rather, that Bellator has to offer. Like, how much of a capstone achievement would winning this title be? There's obviously the component of beating someone who a lot of people regard as like the overall GOAT in Bellator MMA, just considering the cumulative accomplishments. Like, how much of a, I guess, capstone achievement would winning this Bellator MMA featherweight title be for you?
Oh man, it's everything. Like, my whole career has been pretty unique in the sense of bouncing around and not really having a home to build up the ranks. Like, when in the UFC, when I went 3-1, that chapter ended and I moved on, and I was in Brave and I was 2-0, and then that chapter ended, and then I was at PFL, made it to the semifinals, and then that chapter ended, and then finally I got to Bellator, and it took me 3 years to beat these top guys with the rankings and earn my way up. And it was like, finally my time, my title shot, and it's just something for the resume, the brand, and when I look back and my career's done, I want a title on my resume. I don't want just a pretty record and a lot of victories in different organizations. I want that championship status, and then to be able to take it from a guy like Pitbull is just like the cherry on top. It's not like a makeup title, you've seen around, and interim titles and two guys fighting for a vacant belt or whatever, the title changing hands a lot. Like, this is a guy who's been on top forever in the featherweight division, and to be the guy to go out there and take his belt from him is just going to be, oh man, I couldn't picture a better scenario for me to get my title.
And you kind of highlighted an interesting scenario in your career, and you might not even necessarily have the answer to this, but I thought to, I guess, follow up on it. You talk about how there was almost like a certain sense of like start and stop in some of these different promotional runs. Like, why do you think that is? Like, why do you think in some of these prior, promotional stints you weren't able to kind of like get that longer kind of run to show where you're at in the overall hierarchy, I guess?
Yeah, it was just a weird, man, I couldn't tell you with my career, it's just been such a unique one that my re-signing with Bellator was the first time I had signed a second contract with the promotion. It was just circumstances out of my control. When I was in the UFC, I didn't have a manager. I was young. I was coming off of my first loss, so I just wanted to stay busy, and patience wasn't a part of my thing, and that's probably what cost me and got me out of there, which is okay. Like, now looking back, my career is where I've been and where I've got to fight, and everything is worked out. But going over to PFL, and then I was in line for the next tournament, but COVID happened and they canceled all of 2020 season, and I was a guy again, impatient, wanting to fight, wanting to stay busy, because activity is another thing I've been struggling with my whole career, is just wanting to have steady fights in a steady timeline, and I kind of got that with PFL, so I was eager to do that again. And then, like I said, they canceled that whole season, and I wanted to stay busy. And with the management and the team I have around me, I was able to get into Bellator right, the same year, October of 2020, and get a fight in that year as well. So I was able to stay busy. And then once I found Bellator, I felt right at home. I had a good team around me. It was a great division. I fit right in. And that's when they opened up with the rankings. They just debuted with that. And there's lots of good guys for me to fight, and guys that have been on my radar for a long time just because I was a fan of the sport. Like, they had just finished the Grand Prix at 145, which highlighted a lot of their guys. And so it just fit me in at a good timing. And then I spent the next few years, climbing those ranks. And then again, I kind of ran into a roadblock when I earned the title shot, and then Pitbull was doing everything he was doing, and the sale of the purchase of the merger and all that. So it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but it's kind of led me to this point, to where I'm at, and I think I'm physically and mature enough and everything to fight for a world title now.
Yeah, I mean, it seems to have worked out for sure, and it could be kind of cool if things fall into your ideal series of outcomes, because it seems like they're also looking to do like a champ versus champ kind of event next year and keep that like Bellator champion series going, at least for like the foreseeable future. So I mean, that could be a cool sort of thing, like as much as it's like an individual effort as a champion fighter, it could also be like, representing that brand that kind of gave you like the longer kind of run and the opportunity. So some interesting facets there.
Yeah, and realistically, I'm right back to where I was, with the PFL as well. So I felt at home there, and now with the merger and having both of them, and having a career with both of them, and having been successful with both of them, I just think it just puts me in a great spot. And then now winning this title is just going to be even better.
Yeah, and I mean, just like what a resume you've had so far, and like you were kind of talking about like the UFC run and whatnot, just like such a funny thing to kind of look back at in hindsight, almost like just the fact that the Alexander Volkanovski fight was what led to the Brave run and the PFL run, the sort of timeline you outlined there. It's just
fighting Pitbull. So who is the champ during all of this? He's been the champ the whole time. So I've had my eye on him too, and just to come full circle and get my shot at him is awesome, man.
Yeah, it just must be cool to see how things have kind of played out, because like, I mean, like we were talking about, there were certain junctures where it's like, maybe it's just not going to pan out to where I get some of these fights. But I mean, you look at the resume of, featherweights that you fought over the course of your career, just really cool stuff. I imagine that excites you as like a, competitor, getting to fight like the real, I guess, top guys across a few promotions in your generation.
Exactly, man. And then, especially with Pitbull capping it off, and it's going to be not capping it off, but essentially claiming my title from Pitbull. It's not like it was a guy who beat Pitbull and now the title's changing hands or anything like that. It's like I am taking it from the Bellator GOAT, and it's I got to go do it. I got to get the job done. But just to even be in this position, it's just like a career of hard work.
Yeah, you've always showed that gamesmanship and everything like that, and even sometimes outside of the featherweight division too. Like, I still have a laugh at that like rumor that was going on at one point of you being in like some open weight tournament with like heavyweight guys.
That was crazy. That was over in Brave too. Yeah, I don't even know how that came to fruition. I was like in there with like Ali Akbari or something like that. Man, funny, man. But it's just cool how it all kind of comes full circle, man. And here we are. It all worked out.
Yeah, you probably need like more than a few JBCs to get up to that, open weight limit, right?
Oh yeah, exactly. Yeah.
No, but that's awesome, man. And I mean, it's just been cool to follow the journey and stuff like that. And I think like it'd be cool to, potentially it'd be interesting to see how things play out, because with PFL and Bellator and everything, I think there has been talks over the years about how cool it would be for them to go to Canada. Like, I know Bellator went to Canada like many moons ago and stuff like that, but it could be a cool sort of thing. I feel like that really can inform where the company goes large in part too. Like, if they have like a strong champion fighter or fighter who's doing well, it can sort of drive that idea of getting a show out there. So something like that could be cool potentially.
Definitely. And I know like World Series, which kind of was PFL prior, they did some shows in Canada.
Sure.
I know in the 2020 season that ended up getting canceled, original plan was to have a show. I think it was all booked and everything to do in on the east coast of Canada. I think it was like Nova Scotia, and they had Rory and whatnot. But of course, me getting that title will be a huge driving force to hopefully convince them to bring a show to Canada. So, and that would definitely be a goal of mine to try to spearhead that.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of cool potential options and whatnot. But I guess in kind of like observing this fight here, I'm curious if maybe you have like a predominant visualization of how you might see this fight ending here, or if it's more about just like being adaptable and being in more of a flow state with wherever the fight may go in the body of the actual contest, I guess.
Yeah, like with Pitbull, man, it's hard because he's a guy that can fight everywhere, and he's very comfortable in there for 5 rounds. He's got tons of experience, so it's going to be one of those fights that I think I have to show everything, which is going to be cool for me because most of the time I get a hold of these guys, and that's the only wrinkle of my game I really have to show to get the job done and do it dominantly. Where with Pitbull, I think it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to have to chop him down and be a lot more tactical from the feet to the floor and for the entire fight. Like a 5-round fight is different in how you approach it. So I think this is going to be one of those fights that people get to see my full game, which is another thing that I'm super excited about. As far as like how I think the fight's going to go, it really is like I've never been good at giving predictions or anything, but I do think I'm going to be the one dictating the fight, where the fight takes place. And I also don't think it's going to go 5 rounds. That's one thing, is whether it's the feet, the floor, a TKO, a KO, a submission, I just think I'm going to get him out of there in the later rounds, late round 3, round 4, when he starts to really feel me and my pressure and my size and my cardio and I'm in his face. I just think it's going to be a lot for him to deal with because I'm not like a typical guy he's fought before. Like I look at his record and I don't see anybody that emulates even like close to the style that I have, from the wrestling to the height. Borix and AJ were similar size, but Borix is predominantly a kickboxer who's not really interested in grappling. AJ's, funky southpaw kind of guy. He is a good wrestler, but again, not my style of like cage grindy, make you really wear me, heavy, and just pressure fighter. So I think he's going to be in for it. And he's also getting the bump from 3 to 5 rounds as well. So he's going to have to make some changes and adjustments. And I think stylistically I match up great.
Yeah, so many compelling components to this matchup, man, and really happy that, things panned out to where you could get this matchup and everything. Definitely a well-deserved, well-matched title fight. And yeah, super appreciate the insights, man, but I'm kind of curious if maybe there was like a final parting thought you wanted to add as we were kind of wrapping things up, Jeremy.
I'm excited to go get this first world title, man, and I'm excited excited to finally get this opportunity and to see Pitbull across the cage for me. You know, it's been a long time coming. I've been thinking about this guy for so long that it's now that it's finally here, I'm ready for it.
Yeah, for sure, and I think that's a shared sentiment among all of the people who follow mixed martial arts. It's going to be a great title fight with Patricio Pitbull, and definitely looking forward to Bellator 302, man. Going to be a great fight, and appreciate you coming on MMA Canada Radio ahead of the 22nd of March. And yeah, no, it's going to be great to check it out, man, and thanks for the time, and looking forward to seeing this fight when it goes down.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you very much.